Hello, everyone. We are back with a new episode of With Love Soleil. For today's topic, I posted something this week that a lot of people were commenting on and wanted me to kind of go a little bit further into detail around. In fact, Randy in particular, shout out to you, asked me to do a video on this. So here we are. The post was, don't forget to also end the karmic relationships that you're in with yourself. So I think there's a lot of conversation and even more understanding around the karmic relationships that we have with other people, that we identify that there is karma between people, that there's karma in bonds, and that we are often actively working to sort of neutralize our bonds or make peace within our bonds to heal the karma so that it's not attracting us in the same way, that it has no power or hold over us any longer because we've alchemized the aspect of it that maintained some kind of power over us. So if we think about that in relationships, then we could think, well, actually, much of what is happening in relationships is a mirror for ourselves, right? If the conscious person realizes that most of life is mirroring you back to yourself. And, to me, this sort of goes hand in hand with the belief that we sort of choose our parents, so to speak, our family members, are the people who are kind of written in to our life paths, because they're going to be the ones that help us ensure that we have the highest opportunity to kind of heal or clear this karmic relationship, this karmic connection, this kind of soul level area for growth, if you want to call it that. But ultimately, we are here to find neutrality, to find totality in our beingness. And whether we're aware of it or not, we keep score against ourselves. That's just how it goes. Whether you believe in morality or good and bad or right and wrong, ultimately there's a part of you, it might be you're just totally subconscious, that's kind of keeping the check and balance. There is a inner scale that's always being weighed that decides and determines if something that you've done is, beneficial to you and to all, or something that you've done has detracted from you and from all. And as a result, karma ensues, right? This is kind of the whole principle of karma itself, is that you do something, an action is done. Karma really generally comes from the intention behind the action, because if the intention is pure and clear and truly, beneficial for yourself and others, whether the action itself even fully embodies that clear, pure intention, the intention itself is the energy that is put behind something that then sort of determines the karma around it. If the energy is like, totally and only self-serving, or to hurt someone else, or to cause specific harm, that's the energy you're putting out, and therefore you are detracting from, right? That's sort of the negative karma that we've created by having a negative, so to speak, or, lower vibrational intention that then is somehow manifesting, materializing in the physical form, and then therefore will somehow return to you to neutralize that negativity, right? Like life is always looking to even itself out so that you can just exist in your totality. That's ultimately why this is happening. It's a law of the universe. The duality is a law of the universe, so that balance is always possible, that evenness is always possible. And on a soul and spiritual level, our path, our mission in this life is to, kind of make our lives, our spirit, our soul light as a feather, so to speak. If you know that reference, that when you weigh your spirit, that you're completely light, that you haven't gathered any heaviness, and you haven't detracted from the neutrality, the evenness of the universe. So when we think about it from this perspective, then, and we think about then the karmic relationships we're in with ourselves, so to speak, what I mean by that is that, life, we are in many different relationships with ourself, in some capacity. What I mean by that is the relationship we have to, say, food, the relationship we have to sleep, the relationship we have to sex, the relationship we have to our physical body, our minds, our energy, our heart, our spirit, right? There's like multi-dimensional relationships that are all happening simultaneously. And ultimately, whether if it's not another person, then it's us within the relationship to ourselves. And so if you look at things like that, what those relationships then again are always reflecting back to you, say your relationship to food is your own karma in a way. It's somehow your spirit is seeking to kind of even out whatever the check and balance score sheet that your subconscious is available to, is sort of telling you about yourself. Now, to me, the awakening path, the conscious person is aware of the score sheet. They're aware of the fact that they're holding something against themselves. And so they're actively working to neutralize, to, make right, so to speak, whatever that is, because we realize that when we make something right, it's for and within ourselves. We create that evenness, that inner balance within ourselves. It's a return to yourself. Because when you've wronged someone or done wrong in your life, and your sort of moral compass or your subconscious has that on its check and balance sheet, then it is in that point, that choice point, that timeline where a new timeline was born, wherein you abandon yourself. Because you've done something that on a spiritual soul level, was not totally in alignment with your totality. And so that's that detraction, right? That sort of negative karma that you've created for yourself by taking an action that didn't pursue or fulfill or remember who you actually are. And so if you don't actively kind of seek ways to make right your totality, your karma, then life will do that for you, right? And we know this very well, that if it's, and that's, in good ways and bad ways. And I use good and bad in quotations because, good and bad in some way is subjective. In some way, it's still kind of nuancing the totality of the universe. But I think it helps because we all still know as a human, we still have some form of an inner kind of moral compass. And there are a lot of people who don't believe in morality, and that's kind of another topic for another day. So much a larger topic. But at the end of the day, even if you don't believe in morality, you recognize that certain behaviors, actions, and intentions make you feel good and make you feel like yourself, and they feel rich and fulfilling and satisfying. And other action, behaviors, and intention take away from you, and they kind of leave you feeling sort of dry or like less of yourself. And so you can call that good or bad. You can just call that sort of your awareness of the experience of certain things. But all in all, yes, there are things that feel like right action and things that feel like wrong action. That's just how we exist. And when you take right action, you feed yourself, you create evenness within yourself, you return to the totality of who you are, you confirm and embody your most actual, most realized experience. And when you take wrong action, you're taking away from yourself, you're detracting from yourself, you're borrowing from your future self, you're making it so that there's a debt that your future self has to pay. And so when we have these debts, it keeps us away from ourselves, and the distance from ourselves then plays out in our relationship to certain things like food and like sleep and like sex and other, all the other many, many, many relationships that exist in our lives, and even our actual relationships with people, right? Like if you think of when you are in a relationship with someone in any capacity and you've done wrong to them, whether you can justify it in your brain, like, it was okay, they deserved it, or whatever, whatever little justifications we have in our brain, on some soul level, it still keeps us a little bit away from them if we haven't made it right within our hearts, within our heart. That's the key, because the mind can make it right and justify it's logical, like whatever the mind does, it does this little crazy, circus. But the heart knows better. The heart knows when you've done something that needs to be made right. That's where like the true kind of inner moral compass lives, is in the heart. And so we probably all know the experience of, whether it be on your end or someone else's end, when someone's kind of done wrong by you, that they feel a little bit further away. or you feel a little further away from them. That's oftentimes, as say an intuitive woman, you can kind of feel when something's up in your relationship because there seems like a little distance. You can read the distance. It feels like there's something that they're holding against themselves or holding against you. And so there's the distance there that you can read energetically. And so we do this then to ourselves. We distance ourselves from ourselves because we aren't available to the choice point where we made the decision to abandon ourselves. So the work then is to return to that core, that root choice, and find a way to collapse the timeline where that was born into abandoning ourselves. So we find a way to make that right. And if you don't have to. A lot of people are doing this work, and it's fine. It's just how it goes. But it's going to play out. It's going to play out in your relationship. One in particular to me is sleep, because if you think of the process of going to sleep, right? It's like the slow unraveling, letting go into yourself and into your subconscious, right? The subconscious that has this check sheet ready to go, like ready to tell you about yourself. And I do even believe that sometimes even in dreams, some of that's being worked out. I really believe that the subconscious works out some of this karma with yourself, with relationships in your dreams. It's sort of revealing to you little things or clearing out sort of energetic mismatches, misalignments. That I think a lot of that actually does happen in your dreams. But some people are so far from themselves that they can't even let their body rest in that state of just being with themselves, because there's too much. It's too much. They're not available to seeing what's there. And this is not to knock anybody who sleeps less than 8 hours a night. It's not about that. The people who their relationship to sleep is almost like it's not there, because they'd have to meet those parts, those choice points of themselves where they've wronged themselves. And many are just simply not available to seeing that, which is funny, because if you just witness, sometimes it's just the parts of you that need to be witnessed. We're like, I should have done that better. Or the part of you yourself that's hurt, that's asking to be witnessed. And, and you're still avoiding the wound, because if you go into the wound, you have to actually feel it. And a lot of people avoid feeling, right? These are the sort of the deeper subconscious, spiritual layers that you go through in the process of falling asleep. Now, some people just work themselves to death all day, and by the time they lay their bodies down, they're just so exhausted that they're immediately asleep. And so this process, they kind of avoid this process. And again, okay, but also still reflect a reflection of their relationship to sleep, which is therefore a reflection of their relationship to themselves, right? It's kind of like avoiding that sweet spot between awake and asleep, where you kind of process and review and do sort of a spiritual review. You go through the layers, you sort of feel through your day or your relationships or the happenings of your life, and you kind of, do your own kind of check and balance mentally and actively. So this is what I mean by this. This is what I mean by heal or end the karmic relationships that you're in with yourself, so that you aren't moving from a place of self-avoidance or self-abandonment, so that when you go out into the world and you make decisions, you're not subconsciously making decisions that are just simply attracting the lessons that are same lesson, new costume, just so that you can heal this part of yourself that's actively available to healing. But because you're not willing to see or take accountability for your wrongdoing against yourself, then the lesson comes and it's new costume, you play around with it, it goes and it's done, and you don't actually ever learn it or apply the lesson. So it shows up again, new costume, and you stay in these cycles, these karmic loops of the types of people you attract in, the types of friendships that you're in, the types of work environments even that you surround yourself with. It's your whole life is attracting itself in these cycles. It can be a positive cycle. It can be where you are so committed to your own growth that you've done all your checks and balances, maybe not all, because there's often more, right? There's always more of us to develop, but you're actively working on it. You're an active participant in this process. So then life is cool. Your intention is that you want to actively work on facilitating your own personal development, self-mastery, totality. And so therefore, we're going to bring you the opportunities to do so, and you recognize them as just that. And you're actively working energetically and spiritually in all that you're involved in to collapse any, debt, any wrongdoing that you hold against yourself, where you're recognizing the patterns and you're reversing, kind of reverse engineering from where you abandon yourself and where the person in the costume is showing you that, you're reverse engineering it back to yourself. So, as I'm talking, maybe you kind of know some of the things that you have in this capacity. And again, we all have them. We all have, little things that like aren't, if we just sat for a second, it wouldn't take too long to be like, yeah, I kind of did do that to that person. And I feel really bad about it, even though I've decided in my mind it's okay. And so there's forgiveness for yourself, right? Like forgiveness is like the alchemizing tool of all of this, because ultimately when you truly forgive yourself, and truly is the word, because it's easy to say, I forgive myself, it's done, cool, we're over, but you have to actually forgive yourself and go through the process of forgiveness, which sometimes requires action or something spoken or whatever it is. But it's, you can't always just go from identifying the wrongdoing to immediate forgiveness and that's it and it's collapse. You have to let the layers play themselves out, because the layers are what are actually inviting you back to yourself. The layers are what the work that you put into this capacity are actually what's creating more of you and more of you in your existence. You're clearing out the blockages that have been created by what you hold against yourself, and then you're replacing it with more of yourself. So this is how you take your power back. This is how you find that fullness and the totality of being yourself, where you stand completely on your own 2 feet and you feel totally powerful in your own experience, your own existence. And, it's like you feel like anybody can kind of check and balance you, and you'll feel good about it, right? Like you walk the walk, And again, everybody's going to have a different experience of you. So even if someone, feels like you aren't the person you say you are or whatever it is, there's one thing that there's that because they're simply just intimidated by you or jealous of you or whatever energies that they have of you, and really has very little to do with you. But there are also people who you both know you've done wrong to, or maybe there's just some energetic karmic clearing or neutrality or alchemizing that asking to happen in the bond wherein you both would be set free. So sit with this, look at all of your relationships to all of the things, and in your relationships to people and family, and see where your life is asking you to take your power back. And I think that's a good way to look at it, because this isn't to go in like, oh, I'm a bad guy, and you put your like dunce hat on and you feel bad about yourself. And like, it's not going to help to go from it in that angle. It's simply saying, I know that I'm not fully in my power, because I know there are aspects of myself where I'm not totally myself, because I've abandoned, because I've avoided looking at certain things that are actually the root of my power being born. So don't look at this from like you're scorning yourself or judging yourself. You're just going into this like, cool, I'm ready to take my power back. I'm available to full forgiveness over my life and myself and my actions. I'm even to others, right? Because what you hold over another, you hold within yourself. So forgiveness of others, even to, again, neutralize the bond. Because any bond that's neutral, where you're both meeting in the middle, where there's a mutual benefit to the bond itself, is feeding both of you. So ideally, we find that in all of our relationships. Is that possible? No, probably not. It's probably not, that in every single relationship and in every person that you're going to be able to find like mutual benefit and goodness, but you can certainly do the work on your end. You can find your own midpoint within the bond that says, it's clear for me. It's totally clear. I don't hold resentment. I'm not mad. There's not anger. I forgive you. I love you. Thank you for teaching me. Right. And we can do that for all things, all experiences, all the things that we would have done differently, all of the ways that we wish we would have done things better. We can find that neutrality, that forgiveness, that thank you for teaching me, that I love you for the experience that you offered me to become more of myself. So that's my very long-winded way of explaining that post. If this lands with you, let me know. If you have thoughts about this, let me know. But I really encourage you to do this work. I think that the true revolutionaries right now on the planet are the ones who are doing this work, the ones who are taking this full kind of radical accountability over yourself and over your life and over your actions, and saying, I'm willing to show up as my best self, and I'm not willing to give that power to anybody else. That's radical. It's radical right now because it's very easy to play victim to the system or a system of some sort. It's much more revolutionary and radical to say, I'm not a victim to anything. My life is my own, and I have the power to create whatever I want in this lifetime. And you do. So do that. Love you guys. See you next time.